Good evening and welcome to the world today. The United States at the moment is in the throes of yet another presidential election. This one has excited a bit more interest than the last one, but not so much more, because people in different parts of the world increasingly feel that it makes no difference who is elected President of the United States as far as the world is concerned. That the same policies will continue economically, militarily, and in terms of what the United States is, an imperial power, also in the domain of war and peace. Is this true in the current election campaign? We have, of course, a false polarization, effectively pushed by the media, and not just the liberal media in the United States, implying that in Donald Trump we have such a horrific and evil figure that were he to be elected, American civilization would collapse, the world would collapse, God knows what. But if you look at it quite seriously and straightforwardly, and not forget the recent history of the United States, you see that Trump is an unusual figure in the sense that he's so loaded with wealth that he doesn't care a damn what people think of him. He doesn't think before he speaks, that he's bigoted. His attacks on the Latino population of the United States seem atrocious, and they are. But this is not the first time that this has happened in US history. We don't have to go all that far back to remember Richard Nixon's campaign. Nixon was coming on the heels of Lyndon Baines Johnson, who had fought the war in Vietnam, for which reason he had had to withdraw from the campaign and refused to be the president again, refused to stand for president again. And Nixon used Lyndon Johnson's reforms on the home front in relation to the rights of black people, civil rights, some reforms in terms of poverty, which were unpopular in the South because they thought that African Americans had been given too many rights now under Lyndon Baines Johnson. So Nixon waged quite an open racist campaign in the southern states, which was known as the Southern Strategy. Was it qualitatively worse or better than what Trump is doing now? No. There's not much difference in it. They just targeted different sections of the minority population in the United States to win votes from white voters. That is what Nixon did. And he was more or less in the mainstream of the Republican establishment. That is what Trump is doing now, and he is not in the mainstream of the Republican establishment. That is what annoys them. So we have a strange situation where the main Republican family, the Bush family, have abandoned their lifelong loyalty to the Republican Party and will be voting Democrat this time. Bush Sr. might not bother to vote, but Barbara Bush, Bush Sr.'s wife and the mum of Jeb and George W., are definitely going to be voting for Hillary, as is George W., who can't stop giving Hillary a hug and a kiss when he sees her, or Michelle Obama for that matter. Jeb Bush has announced he's going to do it. Large sectors of the Republican establishment will be voting Democrat. Why? Because they are frightened that were Trump to win, he would take the party away from them and bring in a whole new layer of people, a mixture of racists, bigots, populists, whatever. The party could escape their control, and they think the best way to stop him is to make sure that he's defeated in this particular election campaign. Now, don't get me wrong, I have no time for Donald Trump. He is a bigot. He behaves openly as a racist. People say he puts it on to win white votes, maybe, but that doesn't make it any better. What is annoying about the campaign is the way in which Trump is being completely demonized, when we don't have to look too far back to see that many of the things that Trump is saying about Clinton were said by who? By Barack Obama in the primaries when he was fighting against Hillary Clinton to get the Democrat nomination. This is what Obama said at that time.
When Hillary Clinton says I'm out of touch, I just have to remind people of the track record. Senator Clinton, this is the same person who has taken more money from lobbyists than any other candidate, Democratic or Republican, took money from financial folks on Wall Street, and then voted for a bankruptcy bill that makes it harder for folks right here in Pennsylvania. This is the same person who spent a decade with her husband campaigning for NAFTA, and now goes around saying how she was opposed to NAFTA.
And this is what Obama is saying today.
I know Hillary can do the job. And that's why I am so proud, North Carolina, to endorse Hillary Clinton as the next president of the United States. Now, I recognize to some degree I'm preaching to the choir.
And the fact that he's saying different things today is because when he became president, he more or less did what he had attacked Hillary for doing, or what she would do. And the Clinton family, especially Bill, who can get out of control in these situations, made odd remarks about Obama, implying that he wasn't qualified to be the president of the United States. Why? Because of the color of his skin. That is what Bill said. He said, oh, this is a flash in the pan, effectively. We remember Jesse Jackson had a go and he laughed it off. This is what African American people do when they play politics. Don't take it too seriously. So there were certainly strong undertones of racism from the Clintons when Obama was running for the presidency. The point I'm trying to make is that American society, being what it is, with identity playing a huge part in it, the majority of those who identify themselves as white Americans don't care a damn what presidential candidates say about any other minority in the land. So, the main difference between the two candidates is on NAFTA, the treaty which many regard is the worst treaty ever signed by the United States in recent history. Trump is for getting rid of it. Hillary, of course, is totally committed to it, though she's made some noises and some mildly critical remarks. And interestingly enough, NAFTA and being totally pro-NAFTA is what Obama criticized her for as well during the primaries in the run-up to the Democratic nomination all those years ago. You see, one big problem with politics today, and this doesn't just apply to the United States, applies to many other countries, that politicians assume that the people have lost their memories. They think people no longer remember what was done. And the way in which the mainstream media plays a campaign is designed precisely to help people forget the past, even the recent past, like the primary campaigns I'm reminding you about now. So let's, when we get down to it, on the two key issues, NAFTA, say, and war, whether we like it or not, Trump is got a slightly different position. On NAFTA, he says that under him, they're going to get rid of it. And on wars, he's saying that he's less of a warmonger than Hillary is. And he's attacked the American military establishment, not by name, but by saying that these maneuvers that NATO is carrying out on Russia's borders are a provocation. Well, that is something these days when the entire Western media is screaming that the rogue in Eastern Europe and its periphery is Putin. So it's a strange and weird campaign in which Trump is denounced for his bigotry, Trump is denounced for being a stooge of Putin, Trump is denounced for breaking agreements like NAFTA, which he says he will do, and Hillary is by and large fine. Well, she's fine with the New York Times, and she's fine with a lot of the liberal media, but there are strong criticisms now coming through, and they're coming through from below. Because people in the United States haven't lost their memories. They remember things well. They remember, many of them, what she said when she supported the NATO invasion of Libya, the 6 months of bombs that NATO hurled on Libya from the skies. And finally, when militia, some of them funded by the West, finally captured Gaddafi and lynched him in the most brutal way imaginable. What did Senator Clinton say? Secretary of State of the United States of America. We came, we saw, he died. Now this is, according to any logic or according to any decency, a pretty horrific thing to say. When a politician who you've been negotiating with whom the Europeans have been doing deals, both Tony Blair in Britain and Nicolas Sarkozy in France, did deals with Gaddafi. The Americans were talking to him. Then, because they want to get rid of him, they justify the lynching in these horrific words. And yet, not too many people are making too much about this. I mean, people haven't forgotten. If you look at Facebook sometimes, it's like a wailing wall as far as both Hillary and Trump are concerned. So there is protest from below, and I think the last opinion polls showed that neither candidate is that popular with the American public. And this is an important development in the United States, and the huge momentum aroused by Bernie Sanders, literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, not just young people, old people, working class people, African American people, Latino people, who came to Bernie Sanders' meetings, showed that bubbling away underneath is a desperation and a desire for something different. People don't agree with what it should be. Bernie Sanders himself calls it socialism, by which he means social democratic politics, which the United States has never officially had. Whatever it is, it's on the left, it's progressive, and many people would rather have a movement or a political party in which they can feel free and easy and campaign for someone they like or whose politics they approve. The American system today appears broken. It appears broken, and it's not Trump who broke it. The system was broken by his predecessors, Democrats and Republicans, who effectively ruled the country in such a way that they were isolated from the people. And had it not been for the existence of a totally servile media, which boosted these politicians non-stop, who knows what have happened in the United States? Well, increasingly, the media is now being sidelined by large numbers of people because no one believes the politicians or what they say. And one result of that is a lot of conspiracy theories, paranoid theories float around, and what becomes completely absent in this is the truth. We don't get it from the media, which is propaganda for one side or the other, Fox more or less for Trump, all the other networks more or less for Hillary, CNN and the New York Times in particular acting very much as Hillary's campaign managers, and so it goes on. We don't know what's going to happen in these elections. The opinion polls veer from one end to the other. If Hillary Clinton is elected, it'll be business as usual, business as it was under Bush, under Clinton. The Reagan consensus will be there. If Trump is elected, well, we don't know what he's going to do, whether he will pull back American troops from different parts of the world as he's promised, whether he will break the NAFTA agreements with neighboring countries. He could easily carry on in the same old way, as politicians often do, having won the votes they've won. So it's not here that Trump is completely alien to the American political scene. He's very much part of it. And the fact that he's very wealthy makes him even more part of it now, because no one can become the President of the United States unless you have the odd billion to spare. Since the Supreme Court has ruled that there is no restraint or bar on election spending, this has become a rich people's playground. Sanders, had he been nominated, would have been different, but he wasn't nominated, and it is a sad sight, I have to confess, watching him traipsing around the country with Hillary and basically backing her, if not wholeheartedly, nonetheless trying to pull out his supporters for her. That's the problem. If you're inside that party, you have to do it. Not that they behave in the same way in the Labour Party in Britain. Trump could have learned a few things from the Labour Party in Britain, where if a leader like Jeremy Corbyn is elected, who the majority of his members of parliament and the right inside the party don't like, anything goes. You can attack him, you can denounce him, you can slander him, you don't have to support him, you don't want him to win the election, so you don't care if he loses. Sanders was more honorable. He didn't quite behave like that, even though he probably wanted to. He has done the rounds hoping she'd win the elections, and that is partially the problem, because every time there's an election in the United States, the argument comes up, who is the lesser evil? It's the politics of lesser evilism that dominate American politics. I understand that in a way, because people don't want the worst candidate to win, but they always forget that voting for the candidate who you think is the lesser evil doesn't quite work out that way. I mean, Obama was elected with high hopes, and as we've reported on this show many a time, these hopes were badly betrayed. People felt very disillusioned. This president is now waging 7 wars in different parts of the world simultaneously. This president had caved into the pharmaceutical lobby and the insurance lobby, what he was attacking Hillary for doing in the primaries. And so the lesser evil is actually not that different from the other evil, the worse evil. And it's exactly the same in the current situation. There is no way in which Hillary could be defined as being better or more progressive than Trump on most fundamental issues. I mean, Obama himself started deporting illegal migrants from the United States, and more than Bush had done. Hillary will probably carry on that way if she feels it's necessary to win the next time she stands. That's if she wins at all. So American politics on that level is totally predictable and totally depressing. What is one to do? I'm opposed to the lesser evil argument. I think if you don't agree with either candidate, you don't vote for them. If there's someone in the elections, one of the minority candidates, you vote for them if you agree with them. Otherwise, how are things to move forward? I mean, I myself, were I an American citizen, would be voting for Jill Stein, whose politics and whose political positions on almost every single issue are way ahead of those of Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. There's no question about it. She's better on what needs to be done in the United States. She's for state funding to alleviate poverty on a much larger scale than was ever conceived. She is against the wars in Iraq, Libya, Syria, and even on what is a totally contentious issue in the United States, Israel and Palestine. Jill Stein, despite or perhaps because of the fact that she herself comes from a Jewish background, is extremely critical of what the Israeli government is doing in Palestine and has spoken up loud and clear on this issue, much more than any president of the United States in recent memory. So, if you agree with those politics, why not vote for her? Because she can't defeat Trump is the only argument. Well, the person who may defeat Trump isn't going to be any good either. So what the hell matters? Sometimes people say, oh, well, if Hillary is elected, at least we'll be sure of a better Supreme Court. Well, perhaps. You might be. I'm not 100% sure on that either, of who will be in the Supreme Court. And a lot depends on whether the Republicans in Congress agree to the nomination or not, because they're quite capable of destroying a nominee, as they've done before. But in any case, to put the Supreme Court on such a level and forget what is happening in the rest of the world, I mean, I am more interested, quite frankly, in whether the Americans can ever elect a president who's going to pull out of these wars. As we've said many times here before, these wars have been going on for a long, long time. The war in Afghanistan has been going on more now than the First and Second World Wars put together. Iraq is reaching that stage. The Syrian civil war is nearly 6 years old. So we need a president in the United States who effectively is going to say enough is enough. We've wrecked enough countries, we've killed enough people, and it has got to stop. And the only person I can see who's doing that is Jill Stein.
So on the related issue of foreign policy, this has been kind of the elephant in the room that has not been recognized throughout the dialogue of this presidential campaign, and Because in order to be safe and secure here in America, we have to be safe and secure for everyone around the world. We are on one small boat, and we must sail together if we are to avoid sinking together. So how do we do that? You know, people say, well, you got ISIS. What do? We have to bomb ISIS. Well, they're forgetting. Where did ISIS come from? That incredible bombing campaign in Iraq. And where did Al-Qaeda come from before that? From a little experiment in Afghanistan that was created by who? The CIA and the Saudis that created the international jihad movement to start with. And it's been growing back ever since. So we and the Saudis, with one hand, we fight terrorism, but with the other hand, we fund terrorism, we arm terrorism, we train terrorism. So which one will it be? We say we need a new kind of offensive in the Middle East. It's called a peace offensive.
So why not vote for her and make a change? If she would get 3, 4, 5% of the vote, and one's now being very optimistic, it would help to change things. And the notion that all these Bernie supporters, all the people who came out for Sanders, all those people who wanted change, all those people who said they were in favor of socialism as propounded by Bernie Sanders, that they were against the wars, are now going to meekly go into the ballot box and vote for a candidate who believes in everything that they don't believe in. That does astonish me. It shows that there is something sick in the heart of American politics, that this is a broken system now, and that this system cannot go on indefinitely. Sooner or later, it will crack. I think that is what the United States will finally be forced to confront, that the imperial system that they have at the moment does not have a political leadership which is capable of running the country. And a majority of people, for one reason or the other, are extremely tired and fed up. And this America has got to change. It can change if it wants to, and there are enough people who want some key changes in the country. These two candidates are not going to provide those. And so politics will carry on as before. I mean, if you look at these candidates, if you look at how they speak, what they say, I mean, Trump is more spontaneous with disastrous results, but Hillary Clinton is robotic. If you look at her speaking and how she's speaking, even if you're one of her staunchest supporters, do you really believe her? I find it very difficult to take anything that she says seriously. And I'm watching it from afar. People actually part and parcel of it inside the United States must be observing it closely. You keep coming back to the question, are either of these two candidates safe? In my opinion, they're not. So better to vote for the candidate you agree with or not bother to vote at all.